This episode brought to you by TAUMMHOMS, which is a natural sleep and sound healing portal helping people globally to get to sleep faster and stay asleep longer through TAUMMHOMS.com. That's www.TAUMMHOMS.com.
It's My Right Stuff with your host, Grammy Award-winning record producer and inventor, Toby Wright. My Right Stuff is brought to you by TAUMMHOMS, a natural sleep and sound healing portal available globally at www.taummmhoms.com. That's www.TAUMMHOMS.com. And I'm your announcer, Grinnin' Barrett. Here's Toby.
Hey, I'm Lord Toby Wright, and this is My Right Stuff News. Hey, and welcome to the My Right Stuff News. Let's kick things off with the music news. The Sun is Shining Down is the latest full-length release from British blues artist John Mayall and features guest appearances from the Heartbreakers Mike Campbell, guitarist Marcus King, violinist Scarlett Rivera, and many, many others. Extreme Witchcraft is the upcoming 14th studio album by American indie rock band Eels, and was produced by frontman E and John Parrish. It was preceded by the single Good Night on Earth. The album will be supported by the 2022 Lockdown Hurricane Tour. That's the Lockdown Hurricane World Tour. There we go. Whew, sometimes it's tough. British rock icons Skunk and Nancy soar into 2022 with a ferocious new track titled Piggy, a punk rock blast of distorted riffs, snarling vocals, and powerhouse rhythms, as is confrontational and uncompromising as anything the band has ever done. The track is accompanied by a startling lyric video featuring porcine images and Skin's establishment-baiting lyrics, taking aim squarely between the eyes of those corrupt politicians currently in power both in the UK and around the world. Skin comments, "If there's one thing we've all learned over the past couple of years, is that we cannot depend on our governments to look after us." Well, progressive music titans Dream Theater have released the official music video for the song Transcending Time from their latest album, A View from the Top of the World. The single is the fourth video released from the band's 15th studio LP and is another CGI creation by longtime collaborator Wayne Joyner. The song has been a fan favorite since the album was released and is the shortest track on the set, clocking in at 6 minutes and 24 seconds. That's awesome. Last November, Dream Theater was announced as one of the Best Metal Performance nominees at the 64th Annual Grammy Award, which will be held on April 3rd, 2022 at the MGM Grand Garden Arena in Las Vegas. The progressive metal legends were nominated for their song The Alien, the first single from A View from the Top of the World, which came out in October. Well, Ghost kicked off its co-headlining tour with Volbeat on Tuesday, January 25th at the Reno Event Center in Reno, Nevada. During its 16-song set, Ghost performed the recently released single Hunter's Moon and a cover of Metallica's Enter Sandman, debuted other songs from its upcoming Impera album as well. Well, Sevendust has commenced work on materials to the follow-up of 2020's Blood and Stone album. Well, earlier today, the official Sevendust social media was updated with a couple of photos from the Instagram accounts of guitarist Clint Lowry and singer LeJean Witherspoon. And it was accompanied by the following message: "Writing sessions have begun for the next album, and the boys are hard at work." All right, I love those boys. Can't wait to hear this one. Let's go on over to film and TV. Well, The Gilded Age premieres on HBO. It's 1882, and Marion Brooke moves from rural Pennsylvania to New York City to live with her old money aunts, Agnes and Ada. Snowpiercer Season 3 is on TNT. This sci-fi series, adapted from Bong Joon-ho's 2013 film, continues to boast one of the most dynamic TV casts. David Diggs, Allison Wright, Sean Bean, and adds Archie Panjabi in Season 3 as a mysterious survivor named Asha. How could someone live for years in the icy wasteland that the testicular train cuts through? And why is the Earth warming? Weird. The after party premieres on Apple TV+. Is every comedic actor in this whodunit comedy? It was created by Chris Miller, co-producer of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. I mean, of course not, but it feels like that when you see the ridiculous cast it includes. Tiffany Haddish, Sam Richardson, Dave Franco, Ilana Glazer, Ike Barinholtz, John Early, Jamie Dimitro, and Zoe Chow. Crazy. The Fallout, starring Jenna Ortega, Shailene Woodley, and Julie Bowen, is out now. Bolstered by new friendships forged under sudden and tragic circumstances, high schooler Veda begins to reinvent herself, while reevaluating her relationships with her family, friends, and her view of the world. Moving away from her comfortable family routine, she starts taking chances with a series of quicksilver decisions that test her own boundaries and push her in new directions. Well, Cyrano hits theaters today, reimagining the timeless tale of a heartbreaking love triangle. A man ahead of his time, Cyrano de Bergerac dazzles whether with ferocious wordplay at a verbal joust or with brilliant wordplay in a duel. That would be swordplay in a duel. But convinced that his appearance renders him unworthy of the love of a devoted friend, the luminous Roxanne, Cyrano has yet to declare his feelings for her, but Roxanne has fallen in love at first sight with Christian. Uh-oh. Let's go on over to the world of sports. Well, in Formula One news, it was announced this week that Alpine will pull the covers off the new car on February 21st, 2 days before the preseason track session of the year at Barcelona, Catalunya, which begins on February 23rd. The A522 will be raced this year by Fernando Alonso and Esteban Ocon, who will team up for a second season at Alpine. Good luck, boys. And the NFL playoffs continue this week with the conference finals. The AFC Championship will be the Bengals taking on the Chiefs, and the NFC Championship is the 49ers playing the Rams. Good luck to all those teams. The winner of this week will go on to face each other Sunday, February 13th in Los Angeles in Super Bowl 56. Awesome. Well, let's go on over to the world of gear and tech. Well, as My Right Stuff News reported this past fall, Apple launched the M1 Max configuration in its MacBook Pro laptops. Well, now, it looks like the new chips are getting ready for release in the iMac. Sources like @DylanDKT, renowned for Apple rumors and leaks, say the forthcoming iMac could ship with an even more powerful CPU. On Twitter, he claimed that a 12-core CPU configuration was tied to a snippet of code referencing the iMac, which, as we later found out, referred to the new Apple iMac Pro. Apple's silicone processor has been making waves in the mobile market towards the end of last year, with the M1 Max MacBook Pro getting rave reviews praising the design and performance in almost every department. With this in mind, we can expect the latest iMac to blow us away in the same manner, and the talk of an iMac focused on Pro users is extremely encouraging, whether it bears the Pro moniker or not. And that's all the news that's making the news this week here at My Right Stuff, January 28th, 2022. Now on over to you, Lord Rage.
Oh, hey, thank you, Toby, and you're looking marvelous today. All right, well, welcome back to My Right Stuff, which is a film, TV, sports, music, adventure, and inspirational lifestyle podcast. I'm your host, Lord Toby Wright, and today we have a very special guest and a longtime friend, Mr. Ken Morris. He happens to be the Vice President of Electric, Autonomous, and Fuel Cell Vehicle Programs for General Motors. So today, I expect that we will learn a lot about the GM line of vehicles, both fueled and electric. But before I introduce him, I want to thank you, all of our supporters who stream, download, watch, and support My Right Stuff. Keep spreading the word, my friends. I really, really appreciate it. Well, be sure to click on our show notes below to follow our link tree for a full list of all the channels we stream on, as well as all of our sites and social media platforms. If you would like to donate to My Right Stuff, please follow our support link. Every single dollar helps support the My Right Stuff crew who make all of this possible. And of course, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, as well as the podcast channel of your choice, so you never miss a single episode. And after this episode, please head on over to myrightstuff.com, click on the store tab, and pick up some snazzy merch for those bodies, which would make an ideal holiday present for your nearest and dearest. Hint, hint. Well, as I said, today's guest is General Motors Vice President of Electric, Autonomous, and Fuel Cell Vehicles. He's also a man that loves to get his hands dirty, so to speak, by testing and driving all the cars before the production models are made. So like the new electric Hummer and the Mid-Engine C8 Corvette, along with the new line of Cadillac sedans, won't you please welcome Mr. Ken Morris. Hey there, Ken. Long time no see. How are you today?
Toby, I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, my friend. It's wonderful to see you again.
Absolutely.
And even if it is on this silly little, this way of doing it.
It's better when we have stakes in front of us.
It really is. It really is. But we'll get to those in a little while. But I'm really curious as to what's behind you. It looks like an old 50s Corvette. And what else you got back there?
Yeah, I've got it's 1954 Corvette. So it was one of 4 black Corvettes made that year. And then the other's a recent acquisition. It's actually a 2016 C7 Z06. So that's a fun car to drive around. You know, it has the manual transmission and obviously has the great engine transmission combination. So a lot of fun. And I'm holding a spot in this room for my C8 Z06 that I'll be getting pretty soon. Ooh,
that sounds like fun. You're a lucky man, Ken Morris.
I ordered it to match these two, so it's just I'm going to have a matching tri-set.
Oh, that's just horrible.
Yeah.
Horrible in the best way. I'm coming over to see you so we can go out cruising.
There you go.
So, Ken, I'd like to introduce you to my co-host, the man that thinks drag racing is cars in dresses, all the way from Wales, UK, Sir Gareth Dighton. Hey, Gareth, how are you?
Hey, Toby, my friend, how you doing? Hey, Ken, very nice to meet you, my friend. This is such an honor and a privilege to have you on the show. There's some snazzy-looking motors behind you, fella.
Thank you. Yeah, nice to meet you, Gareth.
Very, very jealous of those. Thank you very much. Well, Toby tells me that not only do you have lots of responsibility at your job, but it seems like you like to have lots of fun as well, like driving the pace car at the Indianapolis 5000. Bit of a racing fan myself, and I've always wondered, what is that like?
Well, I've driven the pace car for the Indianapolis Grand Prix, so that was the inaugural Grand Prix in 2014 when they actually were driving on the road course there. And that was really a blast, you know, being in front of those cars. And that particular race actually was pretty eventful from the start of the race because I took the racers around for, I think it was 2 laps, but they did a start. So they kind of did a Grand Prix style or Formula One style, which they don't normally do in IndyCar. But I was sitting in the pace car directly beside the grid, and the cars had stopped. When they waved the green flag, the cars started, and one car stalled. And so if you can imagine a car stalled, one car is coming up behind it, zigs to move very quickly. The car behind the car that zigged didn't see him and rammed directly into him. So, it was pretty rough. And there was debris flying everywhere. And my kids were out there with my wife, standing on the grid. Oh. And luckily, they were with Jim Campbell, the vice president of racing, amongst other things at GM. He grabbed all 3 of them and sheltered them, and took them down. And the mayor of Indianapolis got hit by a piece of debris. It was pretty crazy. And then I was in the car trying to get out because I was, did the first laps, and then the rest of the pace car is done by Johnny Rutherford at that time. So he's retired now, but 3-time winner of the Indy 500. He's familiar with the place, but we were trying to get out and swap belts and everything. So it was pretty intense, but I also drive, every year since 2009 at the Indianapolis 500. So the more well-known race, I drive what we call parade cars. So they normally have a ceremonial pace car driver. Then we'll have 4 or 6 cars behind the pace car, and I always drive one of those. So that's a thrill.
Awesome.
I grew up in Indiana, and I really, really love being there. I've been there every year consecutively since 1989. So it's a thrill.
Wow. That's
awesome. Fantastic. I've actually never been, but I'm sure I'm going to go soon.
You have friends that can get you in there.
That's what I hear. I'm going to have to find their number somewhere. Okay. I'll do that later. Anyway, can't hear my way stuff. We like to start basically at the beginning, right? Like, when did you first become interested in cars and vehicles?
Well, so my dad, he was a construction superintendent, so he ran construction jobs through most of his career, but he went through a time where he decided that he would rather step away from that. And so he actually started a junkyard on our farm. So we had a pretty big farm in Indiana. And so he would haul in vehicles, and I would help, take engines out, take engines apart, take parts off for, people that were coming in. And so I was surrounded by cars all the time. And, I was driving, like I literally was driving a tractor at 4 years old when we were picking up hay, and I was driving down, a hayfield. So, which you can't get in too much trouble in the middle of a hayfield if you've, seen those. Yeah. But I've pretty much been surrounded by cars and machines and tractors, which I still have a passion for all my life.
Right. That's excellent.
What was the first car then you ever remember seeing and thinking, wow, I wish I'd built that one?
Wow, that's tough. That is really tough because I do remember seeing Corvettes, and I had never gotten to even sit in a Corvette until I was probably a junior in college, but I had seen them, as clearly something that I thought was really cool. I, as a kid growing up, my brother had a Chevy Nova 2, which was a pretty cool car at the time, had a Hurst shifter in it. And I just remember that being a pretty cool car to hear and see him drive and things. But yeah, I've always been, and we also, one story at the farm, my dad let me, kind of have a 1968 Mustang that I could just drive around on the farm. So I made a track out there and drove it around and things that it was kind of beat up enough that he was fine with me just playing around in it. And I was probably, 10 years old, 11 years old. But I've always been drawn to GM. I've always been drawn to General Motors. And my dad always had General Motors personal cars. And so I've always been the reason I came to GM, frankly, was because I love the Corvette so much.
At 11 years old, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So what was your actual first car?
You'll like this. Having ridden with me and everything. It was a Ford flatbed 1-ton pickup with a manual transmission.
Oh, nice.
My dad was great, as far as allowing me to do things right. And so when I turned 16, that was the vehicle he had free. And so I drove that back and forth to school every day. And I was thrilled, just to have wheels. And so, the interesting part is, a flatbed, you put side rails on if you want to carry anything on there. And so this truck had side rails, and when I hit a bump, the side rails would fall off. And so I also learned my learned my way around fixing things so that didn't happen anymore. But yeah, that was the first vehicle. My second vehicle, then my dad bought a Ford F-150 short bed pickup. That was, it was probably a 1974, 75 type vehicle. But he fixed it all up for me in 1983. We worked together on it, and that's what I drove, for the rest of high school.
Excellent.
Nice.
I bet there's some jealous kids in there.
Yeah, totally. You went to Purdue University to do a bachelor's degree in engineering. Was your plan always to work in the motor industry?
It really was. I had. That's what drew me to engineering in the first place. And, back on the farm, I remember very vividly, I'm out helping Dad one day. He had a dump truck that we were putting a hitch on, and I watched how he put together the bracing for the hitch, and he was welding it himself. So he's making it himself. And I remember just being fascinated about how do you really think through something mechanically like that. I love mechanical stuff. And that was kind of a moment I thought, I want to do that kind of stuff. And it was always around equipment, never, I was never very interested in chemistry or civil engineering or things like that. It was always around trucks and tractors and things like that. So when I went to Purdue, that's really what I was thinking about, was how do I get into that type of business? And it could have been, I guess when I went to Purdue, it could have been tractors or cars or trucks. But when I was at Purdue, I got a co-op education where I would work a semester, and then I would go to Borg Warner Automotive, which was in Muncie, Indiana, for a semester. Right. And the intriguing thing about that is we did manual transmissions and transfer cases. And so I learned it was a manual. If you remember, the Borg Warner T5 is this legendary transmission that was in all the Camaros, and it was in all sorts of vehicles, but Camaros and Mustangs. And so I was driving all those cars as a college student, with that. And then one of my things that I always kind of humble brag about is I was the second person ever to drive the T56 transmission, which became the 6-speed version of that also was in, all the muscle cars. And, we used that up to very recently in our cars. And so, but I was the assistant to the engineer that was the project manager on that. And so they assembled it, put it in a car, and he and I went out one day, and he drove it. And then he said, "You want to drive it?" And I'm like, "Yeah." So it was pretty cool experience. But having that experience and having the discussions around, it was interesting. We were going to put the T56 in a twin turbo Mustang that was under development at the time. And the conversation was, this thing is going to have like 300 horsepower. It could be so dangerous. How could you hand over a car like that, to just any driver? And so that was the discussion, real discussions that I got to hear at the time. And so it really intrigued me, number one, about the automotive industry, because I got to see how stuff really happened. But then it's intriguing to look back now. And I literally have a C8 Z06 in my driveway right now that makes 670 horsepower, naturally aspirated. That is, fundamentally easy to drive fast. Yeah. And back then, this would have been around 1985, 1986. And no stability control, traction control, the tires weren't like they are today. All those things that 300 horsepower could be a hell of a handful, in a car like that back then.
Absolutely.
Wow.
That's crazy. And I used to have a Camaro as well, and I had the T56 in it, and man, oh man, it was beautiful. Thank you, by the way. I never knew you did that. That's great. So you said that you just recently took the transmission out of commission, and what did you guys replace it with?
Well, actually, the Cadillac CT4 and CT5 Blackwings that we have out right now are the last manual transmissions in the company. in North America at least. And so, those are not T56s, but that was one of the things that I had a hand in making sure that we did put manuals in there, because frankly, even in cars like that, the take rate on manuals are around 5%, when you get into sedans, but I know what's coming. We're going into the EV world where you're not going to have manual transmissions ever in something like that. And we'd already gone to the DCT and the C8. So this was our last chance to have a manual transmission. And I thought that would be really good. And luckily, we all agreed on that. So we've got manuals, and that's my daily driver, a CT5 Blackwing, which is a nice car too. That's 680 horsepower manual.
Yeah, that's pretty nice.
Very nice.
That's awesome. Well, you started working for GM in 89, and so what was your first role at GM, and how did that come about?
I was a brake. It's called design release engineer. So I was responsible for the design of the parts and the integration of those into the vehicles, and so I was responsible for brake pedals, brake booster, and the park brake system.
Okay.
Really good learnings, because those things are, they are required in every car, and they're important. And even though they're not glamorous, that teaches you a lot.
Absolutely.
Was the plan always to work and to actually stay at GM forever?
Honestly, it was, and it's an interesting discussion, because when I hired in 1989, and just because of the way I was raised, I would never think of walking away from something, and it would take me a lot, just because loyalty is just a big part of what makes me up, I think, or my makeup. And at the same time, I watched as the generations change. Gen Y, and then Gen Z or whatever. It's
right.
People are much, much less likely to stay with one company their whole career. They're much more likely, by a very high percentage, to go to different companies. So I might be one of the dinosaurs that, I will end my career one way or the other with General Motors. So start and finish.
I think it's a great place to start and finish myself, especially with the accolades that you hold. And because I know you hold the highest driving certification for General Motors. Is that still in play?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I just in August I went the Nurburgring. So we have levels of driver certification within GM, and there are 6 levels.
Okay.
And so the sixth is the highest, where you can drive on any of the fast tracks in the United States. The tracks like Road America, VIR, Road Atlanta, Circuit of Americas, and then there's one step above where you can be certified for the Nurburgring, which that it gets pretty narrow, the number of people that we have certified to do that. But I've been certified on the Nurburgring since 1998, I believe. First trip around there in '97, where I didn't even know the track at all, and now fast forward, I've been around there a couple thousand times.
That's fabulous. So I know it's 14 miles long, right? The
North Loop. Yeah, the Nordschleife is 12.8 miles, and then they can construct it so that you do the South Loop and the North Loop, which is about 14.1 miles, I believe.
Yeah, that's really cool, because I went there for a 24-hour race, and man, that was one of the craziest races I've ever been to or seen in my life. I mean, I know it's one of the most dangerous racetracks in the world. So, and why do you guys test there? And do you hold any lap records?
Well, first of all, we test because it's just a fabulous track to exercise everything that, as automotive engineers, when we are dialing in the chassis, the brakes, the balance, the way that the brakes hold up over time, engine cooling, all those things. One lap of the Nürburgring, you basically see every type of torturous event a car's ever going to see. From a chassis dynamic standpoint, it has places where the car gets light or actually gets airborne, and then it gets airborne while the car is yawing. So how does a car react to that? Or there's a corner called Fuchsrow where you're going down super fast, and you hit at the bottom, which is full jounce, so it's landing as hard as it can, and it's full lateral at the same time. And then, cars like the Z06 were going 160 miles an hour. So, and then it goes up. And I mean, it's just, how does a car react to going into full jounce and then springing up out of it, and it's moving, and it's just, that allows us to dial it in. So even if you're not a good driver, you feel like a good driver when you're driving our cars, because it allows so much bandwidth and so much envelope. But I love the Nurburgring, and I love actually Germany. I love going to Germany, but the area around the Nurburgring and the villages and the people, and I mean, it's just heaven for anyone that loves the automotive business.
Absolutely.
Were there ever any vehicles that didn't get past the testing stage?
No, by the time we have hardware, so basically by the time we've gotten a vehicle that we're ready to put on the Nurburgring, it's going into production. What we got to make sure is that it goes into production correctly, so that it has all the right tuning. And, it's not like going to the Nurburgring is not a question of safety. Like all the safety FMVSS regulations that we meet for crashworthiness and all the things that go along with that, that's already done. By the time we build cars, they can pass that. Mm-hmm. What we're doing is turning the knobs and levers to make the car absolutely as enjoyable and engaging to drive, and as precise as you want a car like a C8, Z06, or that's our role at the Nurburgring.
So it's actually more about kind of fine tuning and tweaking rather than kind of product development then at that stage.
It's kind of like watching Toby in the studio when he's bringing out all the different guitars versus drums, and then exactly how's the guitar blend in with this, and it's kind of the same thing, only different.
Okay.
Tuning thing.
Now I understand better. Thank you. So have you ever tested or driven like a really high-end sports car like a Lamborghini or a Koenigsegg against a GM product on the track?
I have. Yeah. I've driven, not one of those, but I've driven, the Ferraris and McLarens and the Acura NSX, kind of things that are pertinent to our type of vehicles, the Porsches, of course. And but yeah, I've been lucky enough to drive some pretty cool stuff and at speed.
Nice.
Can you tell us what it's like to drive all of the sportier vehicles the GM makes, like the new C8 Corvette and the Cadillac CTV 4V Blackwing you mentioned just now?
I can tell you that, the evolution of the vehicles, our vehicles for sure, from, I've been doing vehicle development like this since about 1996. And the evolution of the capability of the vehicles is it's kind of logarithmic how fast, exponential how fast these things have improved and how good they've gotten. And, in August, I was driving the Z06 at the Nurburgring, and it is fast. It is a fast car. We haven't published any numbers yet. We will, but it is having been around there as many times as I have and as many different types of cars as I have, I know in my head each corner basically what's relatively fast, and each corner, and as the speed, I know, for example, at the end of Dottinger Hoe is 160 is pretty fast, going through the apex of the left hander at the end, and then I'm looking down in the Z06 going a lot faster than that, being super comfortable just because the car is so good. And so I would say that I'm very proud of our company and the engineers that, from the analysis and the people that do the structure on the vehicle, the brakes and the chassis and suspensions, and just the fact that all those learnings over all those years that we've continued to push, and it gets better. So it's exciting. I mean, that side of the business is really exciting.
Absolutely. So let's get into some technology. Like, I know GM just brought out the electric Hummer, and that must be fun. It has some really impressive specs, like 1,000 horsepower for the pickup truck and 850 for the SUV. It also has a revolutionary four-wheel drive system that includes a crab walk. and the extract mode. Can you tell us about these revolutionary technical feats?
Absolutely. It's first of all what most people don't recognize, just because the auto industry is a lot more complex than most people think. So normally when you say, all right, we're going to do this vehicle, it's about 5 years, maybe 4 years by the time you go through the design and development, creative design to make the outside of the vehicle, inside the vehicle look like you want. Then you get to the point, a couple of years in where you start getting physical properties. And so it's up to this point, been that type of a pace. But for the Hummer, we decided we needed something quickly. And we as a company really have stepped in and say, we are going to a zero emissions future, which means electric vehicles. And, I can get into it later, all the details about that at a macro level, company level. But for the Hummer, it's basically been 2 years where we said we're doing it to the point where we should be shipping to customers by the end of this year. And the technology that you mentioned, the kind of propulsion system that delivers, 1,000 horsepower and moving that vehicle 0 to 60 in 3 seconds. I mean, think about that.
Wow.
And then the all-wheel steer system that, the thing that I love about the Hummer is I can demonstrate the Hummer in my subdivision and people will get an idea about how awesome it is, because it's 4-wheel steering. So when it's a bigger vehicle, but when you want to turn tight, the 4-wheel steering goes like this. And so it almost feels like you're turning right around the center of the vehicle. It's just, you just can't believe it. And it blows people away. Then when you want to do a crab walk, like at lower speed, you put it in crab walk mode and it steers together. So the whole vehicle is translating together like this. And that feels really odd when you do it, but you can demonstrate it going 5 miles an hour, 10 miles an hour.
Okay.
And then, of course, if you want to show the watch to freedom mode, which is the 0 to 60 in 3 seconds, it's really cool. You put it in watch to freedom mode, the vehicle lowers down, and then you get this, audio sensation come through the speaker systems. There's haptics coming through the seats.
Wow.
And then you press and hold the brake and the throttle basically to the floor.
Okay.
And then it says system armed or something like that. And then release the brake, boom, and bam. It's like being shot out of a cannon. And you don't have to go 60. You just have to feel the launch. You can show people that anywhere. It's pretty amazing. And the reason I brought up the fact that it's a 2-year vehicle is when we started it, and we were talking about things like extract mode and crab walk and rear steer. Being in this business a long time, I was thinking maybe we should do that like year 2. Maybe we should just do the base vehicle and bring that kind of technology in year 2.
Actually, go big or go home.
To the team's credit, they knew they could do it. We unleashed them, and it is delivered. I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing.
That's great. That's right.
Yeah.
So I know the interior has a multi-sensory experience, and does this include the Super Cruise, and is that a completely autonomous mode?
Well, Super Cruise is a driver assist system. So other manufacturers may claim that it's driving itself, but it's not. Or our system, safety is the number one factor. So our system, Super Cruise, monitors your eyes and makes sure that you're paying attention. You don't have to touch the steering wheel. You can sit there like this, and the vehicle will drive itself. But we just make sure that it's driver in the loop, that you're paying attention. And if you need to take over, we give you, a warning that you need to take over, and then you grab the wheel, everything's fine. But it's advanced to the point where you can, drive down the road and you touch it. The turn signal, it steers for you, steers back into the lane if you want. You can use Super Cruise while it's trailering. So that is one of the things. Actually, driven to Nashville to see you one time, and I was driving an Escalade that had Super Cruise, and it's incredible how relaxed you are after being in a vehicle 8 hours, and you really just have to watch the road. You don't have to steer and do all the other things. And it makes a big difference in how rested you can be in a longer trip.
That's excellent. Yeah, those long trips will kick your butt.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
Wow. So am I going to be able to pull up to, if I have my Hummer and I pull up and I'm like at a charge and the only thing around is a Tesla dealer, can I pull up there and do I have an adapter or can I just, do I have to wave and just go wish that I could charge over there, or how does all that work?
Well, I think all the other manufacturers are going towards the SAE standard. So there's going to be a lot more than just the Tesla charge stations around. And, I don't know about adapters and things like that for Tesla. I mean, I think I would rather have charge stations that are designed and equipped for every other vehicle in the world.
Right. Okay. Well, you got the GM Ultium battery platform. What is this, and how is it different from other manufacturers?
Well, first of all, we're doing all of the EVs that we're doing on the Ultium platform are ground up integrated electric vehicles. So that means we start with a battery pack and we design everything else around it. So it's as efficient as it possibly can be. And then we also tie the battery pack, which is kind of, if you've seen the pictures of it looks like a big box. That's what we call the battery pack.
Okay.
And then that's part of the structure of the vehicle. So it's always low in the vehicle, but it also provides great torsional stiffness, which is very important for handling and for ride. And it also helps the first beaming, which is a technical term, but it helps the ride of the vehicle as well. But inside that pack, we've also got modules, and so we can have between 6 and 12 modules inside the pack, which are basically kind of boxes that have the battery cells inside that box. And so we can mix and match how many modules we need for a given vehicle. Like some vehicles, we might have a 10 mod, that's a more cost efficient, but just has less range, or a 12 mod that has maximum range, or even in the Hummer that we've been talking about, or our future BET pickups that we've announced, we have a 12 mod pack that we stack another 12 mod pack on, and you can have up to 24 modules, for maximum range, maximum power, those type of things. So I guess what I would say is the uniqueness of the Ultium platform is it is modular. It's like a building block system that we can decide how many we really want in there, how to use them, what kind of voltage we want. Do we run them in parallel series? The other thing is inside the Ultium system, we have a wireless battery management system. So inside that pack, all the information that we need on state of charge and temperatures and everything else, we don't have tons of wires running out of there. It's basically a wireless system. So it's a lot less complex than it could have been. And then it's the Ultium system really also includes the drive units. And the drive units, you kind of think about like a combination of the engine and transmission, but they drive the vehicle. And so you send the power from the pack to the drive units, and we are vertically integrated in those drive units for the most part. We have designed and built transmissions for 100 years. Right. And so moving into that is not a big leap for us at all. We know how to do it. We know how to hone gears. We know how to do all that stuff. And so that Ultium system is really the entire propulsion system, the drive units, power electronics, inverters, the pack.
That's killer. I love that.
That's incredible. So the Lyric and the Hummer, are they the only electric vehicles the GM produces at the moment?
Well, we actually, what's in production at the moment is the Bolt EV and Bolt EUV, so Chevy Bolt. That's not on the Ultium system. So that's on, we call inside the company BEV2, but it was a previous gen, great vehicle. People love that vehicle, but we're starting with, we actually will launch 3 electric vehicles between now and the middle of next year. We have the Hummer that everyone's very familiar with. We also have what's called an electric light commercial vehicle. So if you think about UPS trucks or FedEx trucks, kind of the big box trucks that deliver stuff to your door.
Yeah.
Right.
We're building one of those, and we've got partnerships with some big companies and doing tests with big companies that you would know that I think we're going to have a lot of those going out because they're zero emissions vehicles. And especially with delivery companies like that, you can send the vehicle out and it comes back overnight, charged overnight. Range isn't an issue at all with them, and they're actually very easy to manage. And it's a much lower cost of ownership on an EV than it is internal combustion engine vehicles. So we're launching those this year yet as well. And then the Cadillac Lyric before the middle of next year, we'll have those going out of plants as well. But there's also, by 2025, globally, we'll have 30 EVs in production. And so 2/3 of those are in the U.S., and we have all sorts of things. I'm very proud, you can tell, of what we're working on. But what we're doing right now that nobody else has done is we have not just one or two entries. We've had a Bolt EUV and EV up to this point, but if you want a Chevy Suburban size vehicles, because that's what you need, as much as you might want an electric vehicle, a Bolt won't work for you. But by 2025, we're going to have a full portfolio of vehicles from sedans all the way up to full-size trucks, pickups, Hummers, and everything in between. So if you want a C SUV, a Chevy Equinox type vehicle, we're going to have that for you in electric. Or if you want a Chevy Blazer, or if we have a full portfolio of vehicles that are going to be here. And so it's going to make it a lot easier for people to choose what they want. And, I believe, my personal opinion is by 2025, it's going to be an inflection point in consumer demand for EVs, because when people really start living with EVs and driving EVs, there's no reason to have anything else.
Right, exactly. With all those vehicles that General Motors is producing by 2025, like right now, what's the biggest challenge you face in manufacturing new electric vehicles?
So that's one of the questions that I enjoy, because people that are new to automotive manufacturing, they talk about how difficult and complicated manufacturing is. And that's one thing at General Motors, we have enormous confidence and prove it every day. We build over 7 million vehicles a year and have been doing it for over 100 years. And that's the least of our worries in transitioning, from internal combustion engines to EVs, because frankly, so much of a vehicle is the same, that if it's EV or not EV, you still have tires and wheels and suspensions and structure and steering wheel, the whole thing. And we know how to do that. We do it every day. And so the manufacturing part of it is not something we don't take it lightly, for sure. We're going to work every bit as hard at that as we do on internal combustion engine vehicles. But we're ready for that. That's not going to be the challenge of the transition.
So is the challenge more in the design than in the
honestly, the biggest challenge for EVs in general is the cost of the batteries.
Okay.
So the biggest challenge is, how do you continue to ride down that cost and find ways to make the cell chemistry and the cell and the modules, the packs, lower and lower in material cost. And so that's what the industry is really trying to do, which is why we jumped in with both feet. We jumped in and said, we're going to transition our fleet, by 2035, we're going to be on electric vehicles only. And when you do that, we're a big enough company, we can kind of create scale on our own. And that's what you've got to have to start driving the cost down for this type of technologies, for the drive units and for the cell chemistries and everything else. So that's the challenge. And everyone that's familiar with EVs, the industry, recognizes that. And so that's what we work on every day. We've got our smartest people working on the vehicles and on the, how we execute the vehicles so the customers love them, but also how do we make them more and more cost efficient.
Right. So I have a 350 in a Camaro, can I retrofit this or no?
Well, it's an interesting question because we have a mutual friend, Russell Blinas, who
Yes.
has done an E-Crate. And so he's actually retrofitted in, I think he did a Chevy Blazer recently, one of the older Chevy Blazers. And
Right.
so he's put, we've had E-Rods, we call them, and we've even got an E-Copo, that is a drag car with electric propulsion. So
Wow.
we have kits. If you want it, we can do it.
That's fabulous.
And it's, I was describing before with an electric motor, it's, the Hummer is the example. It's 1,000 horsepower, but, roughly 11,000 foot-pounds of torque, and it's instant torque. So when you start getting used to driving the cars, the EV cars, even in high horsepower internal combustion engine cars, they just never will have that precision of throttle, the throttle pedal,
Right.
that an EV does, because you can be so precise in how you apply torque and bring in acceleration that is very, very habit forming, especially when you put big torque in.
I bet. Yeah.
You were talking about challenges. Have there been any issues with people sort of accepting like sort of electric vehicles?
Well, we do a lot of research on customer acceptance and what we think the adoption rates are going to be. And like I said earlier, I think the inflection point is going to come when people really are exposed to them. Like, no kidding, they get to drive them, or they get to ride in a friend's EV, or they see what kind of lifestyle usage you get from cars, like how you never go to a gas station. You never have to go to a gas station. For the most part, you can just drive from your house, and unless you're going on a trip. So I think we see customer acceptance climbing year after year. That number gets higher and higher, where people will consider buying an EV. We do clinics, like the clinic on a Cadillac Lyric was first of all, the highest scoring clinic we've ever done in terms of the exterior styling of the vehicle. People loved it. And then we also, the number of people that walked into the clinic saying they wouldn't consider an EV, that walked out saying they would consider an EV, was dramatic. It was a very high percentage. So
Wow.
I do think it's just like anything else. There are people that are understandably diehard, that they want to be able to hear their engine, and they've grown up with gasoline. And I'm one of those, by the way, that it kind of came from that side. My entire career up until 2 years ago, I've been on the performance side of the business, and I've always worked on our highest performance stuff along with other things. But I'm converted. I mean, the EVs are a blast. They're fun to drive.
I'm going to have to get myself at least one.
There you go.
Well, I was doing some research, and I found that Cadillac has a flying car. And I know it's an eVTOL, which is a electric vehicle, a vertical takeoff and landing vehicle. And we had a gentleman with a company called Air from Israel that already has an eVTOL in testing here on My Right Stuff a couple of episodes ago. And these are really fascinating to me. And are you involved with this at all?
I am. I can't talk about it much, but I am.
Yeah, okay. That's all I wanted to know.
I'll put it this way. So an arm of my engineering team handles our innovation engineering. So the things that we're looking at, and there are lots of different things that kind of fall into that category.
Right.
But I'm very familiar with VTOLs.
Excellent. Okay. Well, that's good to know, because, those things are so fascinating to me. I just, I don't know. I just think, I think Jetsons and, and the Fifth Element movie and things like that, so.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, totally. And I think kind of being a generation that's actually grown up with really well-made kind of science fiction, it almost makes that science fiction that little bit more real, doesn't it? You know what I mean? To like kind of think you can go out and then you sort of get in a car that flies. And, it's like kind of the type of thing that's been fantasized about since actually the 1950s. Right.
So actually, the reason why we're getting more advanced in technology is it's probably not intuitive, but it's because of software a lot of times more than the hardware that we're using, and the way that we control the machines.
Okay.
It is really, really advancing. And an example of that is in the rear of the Hummer, we have, in the Edition 1, so that's 1,000 horsepower version, our drive unit in the back actually has 2 motors. And so we can control those 2 motors with software and really make it so that it's like torque vectoring, which is a pretty advanced technology that helps in the vehicle dynamics for understeer, oversteer, and a lot of other things. And it's just that kind of software and precise control and the frequency response that the machines react to using that is advancing quickly.
That's excellent. So what's been your favorite car to ever drive, like GM or otherwise?
Well, obviously, I have to start GM first. Honestly, the Z06 I've got outside is an animal. But it's, like I mentioned before, it's an easy car to drive fast and hard, but it's also drives so well down the road. It's like a wolf in sheep's clothing, to be honest. It's sheep on the road, and then when you want to go race car mode with carbon ceramic brakes and the MR shocks and all the things that make it just amazing, along with the power levels.
Right.
And then in the end, the sound of the engine, it's a flat plane crank, naturally aspirated V8, makes 670 horsepower. And the team tailored the exhaust system so that it reflects sound back into the cabin. So you hear all the good sounds of the exhaust. And it's just, it's a beautiful, beautiful sounding vehicle. So that's kind of, each one of those. And then it's a different category than the CT5 Blackwing sedan, which is the best sports sedan I've driven in the world. And I've driven them all, hands down. And I'm a hard grader. I'm supposed to be the guy that, gives feedback to our teams on what needs to be improved. And I can tell you the CT5 is just an unbelievably well integrated vehicle. As a matter of fact, the vehicles I'm talking about, the C8 Stingray, so the base version of the Corvette, the CT4 Blackwing, Cadillac CT4 Blackwing, and the Cadillac CT5 Blackwing were all just named the Car and Driver's 10 Best. So 3 of the top 10 vehicles in Car and Driver's list are our vehicles. And they're just very well integrated vehicles. So then if you want to jump out into something that I just really enjoyed as driving was, I think it was a 2012 Ferrari 458. And that was before, the 488 went to a twin turbo setup. So it's kind of a different animal. The 458 I really enjoyed because I thought dynamically it was a fun vehicle, but that engine sound, and it also had a DCT, so instant shifts, paddle shifts, however you want to. Paddle shifts the only way I drive that car. I don't ever drive an automatic, but and it was just I really enjoyed that vehicle. So if I ever win the lottery and I wanted to have something different. And then there's the second place, maybe by a little bit, is a Porsche GT2, one of those pretty fun car to drive around. It's a racetrack a race car on the street, which is a lot of fun.
Right. Excellent.
While the major part of your life has been working for GM, we kind of know there's more to you than the GM life. So can you explain to our listeners and viewers how you are linked to the incredible band Frame 42?
I like that question. I like the way it's framed. Well, it's an interesting thing that both of our kids, so Ava, who's 18, and Brock, who's currently 16, have ended up in a rock band together. And they're with 4 other very talented musicians that they have been together. Really, Frame 42 has been together for 4 years, and Brock has been in the band for the past 2 years, and they're really skilled performers and musicians. And I'm try to be as objective as I can, and I try to watch, other bands when they play live and our band when they play live and things. And I do try to be kind of honest with myself because you have to be. And when Toby and I first met, that's kind of conversation I had with him is, I want to be absolutely bluntly honest about what do we have. And I think in the end, the band who they've recorded an EP with Lord Toby here, and they've actually are looking to record another one. They're putting together material right now, but I think they're an up and coming band. They just came off tour with Joyous Wolf, which was their first national tour, which was a great experience for them, and really proved to them of all the things that go along with touring, including getting up and bringing it every night, having that energy every night. They did it. Yeah. So it's interesting. I obviously have lots of fun stuff going on at work, but it's hard not to get really caught up in what they're doing because it's exciting, totally different business, but I love to watch them play.
Right. And they are fantastic musicians. And I really, really enjoyed producing the Undercroft EP. And I look forward to doing the next EP as well, and hearing some of these songs that you're speaking of. So what are the upcoming plans that they have, and how can people find Frame 42?
The easiest way is www.frame42.com. And that kind of leads you to all the different areas. Their music is on every streaming platform, Apple and Spotify and you name it. You can, enter in Frame 42 Undercroft and you're going to find, or just Frame 42, and you'll find their music. And they're on a little bit of a break where they're writing right now, and they're going to crank back up December 3rd, where they're headlining kind of a music festival here in Michigan. Actually, Toby, at the Diesel, which you've been, where they did their EP release party, and then they're looking into another tour. As soon as we would love to get on certain tours that are happening, and trying to make efforts to get on those tours. And it's just they have momentum and they want to keep the momentum. So I think getting out again nationally is going to be very important for them.
Yeah, I agree. And keep that momentum up, because that's the only way that you just keep climbing up,
Right.
And so, well, let's go back to cars a little bit. So if you could drive any car from history, film or television, what would it be and why? I'm going to answer the question first. My favorite car of all time is the Munsters. I don't know if it was a Bucket T or what the heck that thing was, but it was, I've always I got to drive that thing. And then there was the Monkey 65 or 66 GTO, right? It was all those two crazy cars is my answer. Just because they're so iconic, right?
Right.
So what do you got?
I have never really thought about that before. I think, I would like to drive a Formula One car, just, because I do know that's the highest form of racing, and I've loved watching that. I love the technology, and I also love the driver's capability, which is beyond, reproach. But I've just to be able to experience what the G-forces feel like and how precise it feels, and what does the understeer, oversteer really feel like, and is it kind of in the linear range? Is it huge confidence? And then when you get in the nonlinear range, is it progressive, or are you oversteering snap? All those kind of things you always wonder when you watch those guys drive. I'd like to experience that. But as a side story, I did have a chance to drive one of Rick Hendrick's from Hendrick Motorsports NASCARs. And it was actually a Kyle Larson livery car that we ended up driving, but it had been modified from the standard NASCARs that they run, that it had 200 extra horsepower, and it had a sequential shift transmission. So
nice.
The
Punchy.
the eye opener for that was, I could drive it. It was interesting. I could make the transition and drive it quickly. It felt a lot different than our cars do. It just feels different because we had it on our Milford Road course at the Proving Grounds, and that track is set up like the Nurburgring, where there's an enormous amount of heave motions and off-camber turns and things that NASCARs go to road courses but typically not like that, not like road courses that are designed to be very, very difficult on the cars. Right. NASCAR goes to race, right? So they're not developing cars, they're racing cars. And so I just noticed the difference between those. But the biggest eye-opener, which you'll appreciate this, getting in and out of a NASCAR through the window with the seats, with they've got the bolsters up, and you've got a hole about that big around where you've got to get in and out of. And so, and I've met Kyle Larson. He and I are not the same size.
No, you're
he's
not.
He's a little bit more energy efficient than I am. So, and then once you get in there, which they actually, they pour a foam seat around you, so you are completely snugged in. And then you've got your Hans device, and you've got, it is, I'm not claustrophobic, but I felt claustrophobic in that car because by the time you get in, you get strapped in, it takes 5 minutes to get out of it. For somebody like me. For Kyle Larson, I'm sure he can get out of it in 20 seconds. But it takes, to get everything strapped out and everything. It's just, it was an eye-opener to me of just something as basic as getting in and out and being crunched in. That was a different experience than anything. Most of the cars, even when we drive cars on the tracks, our development vehicles, we always have 5-point harnesses, roll cages, all of that, but it's never quite like this was. It was a different experience.
Right. And is that because of the seat and those things and the bolsters that they have next to it, and they can't move your head? And
right. You basically can't move anything. You can't move. You can barely, they set it up so you can, like the steering wheel is right down on your knees. And they raise it up so you can, if you got a clutch or, and this was a sequential shift, so I didn't have to, but you got to be able to reach a shifter, and that's about all you can move around. So, but again, I'm not a normal size NASCAR driver, so I'm sure they felt like there's plenty of room in there and it's not a problem.
Right. Nice. Well, here on My Right Stuff, we like to have a bit of fun and laugh a lot, as you've noticed. So we also have a very silly question. Do you have any hidden talents or superpowers? I know one of them. It's a superpower. Yeah, you do have a superpower. Well, after you tell me what you think yours are, I'll let you know what I know it is. One of them is.
Wow. Hidden talents. Well, most people don't know I play drums and play piano a little bit, but that's not like, now that I've gotten into the world of music through the eyes of my kids, I realize I don't really play drums, and I certainly don't play piano. Like I am a hack at the highest level, but boy, I'm a pretty open book, so I don't know what my hidden talent would be.
Okay, well, we can go with the musical thing, but one thing that I'm going to fly out of California and go to Michigan just for this experience is having you grill a steak for me. Because, man, you are one of the best steak grillers ever. That, I think, is an amazing superpower.
I appreciate that, and thank you. I should actually get an endorsement from the Big Green Egg, the grill smoker, because I've converted so many of my friends and coworkers to Big Green Eggs. I bet I've sold 100 of them for them, because I do the same thing. I bring people in, give them a meal, and then they realize Big Green Egg is magic.
Exactly. Well, Ken, this has been a very informative and very speedy episode. I really enjoyed all the info and the wisdom you shared with us here today, and it was fun and exciting, and I hope you do it again in the very, very near future. And thank you, Ken, General Motors, for taking part to be part of this episode of My Right Stuff.
Thanks, Toby.
You're certainly welcome. I'm your host, Lord Toby Wright. Remember to listen loud, play hard, and keep reaching for your dreams. Gareth?
Thank you very much, Ken. It's been a pleasure, as always. As always, it's the first time I've spoken to you, but it's been an absolute pleasure to catch up with you. It's been very informative, and I feel like I've learned a great deal from it. So thank you very much for that. Do you suffer from insomnia, depression, or anxiety? Well, our sponsor, TAUMMHOMS, may be able to help you in these areas. TAUMMHOMS, a natural sleep and sound healing portal, helping people globally get to sleep faster and stay asleep for longer, and you can find this piece of gold at www.taumms.com. That's www.taummmhoms.com. Most of all, I'd like to thank all of you beautiful people who stream, download, watch, and support My Right Stuff. And please keep spreading the word, because we really, really appreciate it. Also, we now have a My Right Stuff store where you can pick up some lovely snazzy merch for those beautiful bodies. Just go to myrightstuff.com and click on the store tab. And don't forget to tag us in any photos of the merch so we can include you in a future episode. Please also be sure to subscribe to the podcast channel of your choice, as well as our YouTube channel. Toby says it'll give you 10 years good luck. I'm not so sure. I think it's maybe more. This has been another amazing episode of My Right Stuff, and please be sure to tune in this week, next week, and every week for yet another adventurous and informative show. I'm your co-host, Sir Gareth Dighton, and thank you, my lovelies, for tuning in. No star, you beautiful people, and we'll catch you next time.
Thank you for watching My Right Stuff. This episode was brought to you by TAUMMHOMS, a natural sleep and sound healing portal available globally at www.taumms.com. That's www.taummmhoms.com.